I am Jeanette Bush with Courageous Home Care, back for another episode, another fun episode that we have for you that's going to be informative, engaging. Have an opportunity to learn a lot. I promise you, when you walk away from this one, you're going to be just itching for the very next one. We have a wonderful guest in the studio with us today. This young lady is going to come in and bring a wealth of information. Her name is
Brandy Fields.
And an organization that you work with is
Iron Adaptive.
Okay. Iron Adaptive. And what kind of company is that?
So Iron Adaptive is a nonprofit 503c. We focus on bridging the gap between physical therapy and getting just acquainted back to life after an injury or a disability that's been acquired. But not only do we work with people who have had traumatic injuries, but we work with people who have been born with things such as Down syndrome or things of that nature. Cerebral palsy, all of those things. And so right now we're, kind of getting off the ground. This summer is when we started really making a lot of noise. It's been going on since about, I want to say it's been 10 years now, maybe.
Ooh. Okay.
I could be wrong, but it's been a couple of years that they've been operating, but we're just getting more traction now. And they brought me on as their director of marketing and media. So
I'm with the director. Okay. Congratulations on your position.
Thank you.
Yeah, we got Brandy in today. We talk about topics here at Courageous Home Care. We always talk about healthcare needs and healthcare concerns. We try to answer questions that arise for those who are caregivers and for family members or clients. So we kind of do a combination of both. We look at both both perspectives, the caregiver as well as the client, and seeing how we can bridge the gap and ultimately meet the need, because that's the goal. We want to meet the need, empower families, especially when you're dealing with clients who are elderly, disabled, or adults with disabilities. This platform is designed to be able to give information and to empower families to make the best decisions that they can for those that they love. And I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about, have you share your journey about how you became the director of Iron
Adaptive.
I mean, you didn't just wake up and go over and say, I'm president today of Iron Adaptive.
Right.
There's a road to this path. And for some of us, like I have an identical twin sister born with cerebral palsy, and that's been my fire from birth. We were twins, and then we were preemies, weren't supposed to live. We were like a pound, and then we survived, and then it just mushroomed, and we're still here living and thriving. And so all of us usually come to our journeys, whether we are whether they are kind of carved for us, or we sort of take on those things and embrace those. But today we're going to talk a little bit about your journey. I know a little bit about your story. You are a part of Courageous Home Care. That's how I know Brandy. I know Brandy, a little bit of Brandy's story. I want Brandy to be able to share the story, and I'm going to try to be as delicate as I can, because I want you to be able to share your journey and then help those who are maybe have encountered this this part of their life, but then talk about the piece with mobility and Iron Adaptive, because it is a part of what the work that we do, but trying to access services for some families when they have encountered challenges or difficulties, whether at birth or you had a traumatic incident that happened that kind of thrust you in this path. Either way, the first question is, what do I do? Who do I go to? And what resources are out there in the community? But that's what you're going to do today.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, let's see, we have a date here, June
2nd is when I technically, the incident occurred, and then June 3rd. So I always say June 3rd is when the incident happened. It's just easier that way because medical documents, and that's when I arrived in the hospital at midnight.
Well, let's talk about that. So you arrived at the Kansas City Hospital after midnight. Let's talk a little bit about how life changed at that moment. What's happened for you? How that period right then, life changed, and then how you've been able to progress, and then where you are now.
Okay. Well, to give a little background for the audience, I was shot 3 times in a domestic dispute with my stepfather, and very close to ending my life. However, I believe in God, and I feel like He saved me in that moment. Because reading my records, I am a registered nurse as well. So reading my records, I was able to understand how close to death I really was, and it was kind of a moment of revelation, like, wow, it is a miracle that I'm still here, because for a long time I questioned, why did I survive? And I think that me questioning that led to my role that I'm in with Iron Adaptive, and more. So yeah, I arrived at the hospital at midnight. It took them a while to stabilize me because I lost a lot of blood in that situation. I was shot in my arm, chest, and one of the bullets went through my armpit and lodged into my spinal cord. So I have a T6, T7 incomplete spinal cord injury. And my case is really unique because many have not seen the amount of progress that I've made in such a fast time. It's only been a year. And so to give the audience a general idea of where your T6, T7 is, it's right below your breast line. So I was completely paralyzed from here all the way down. And as you can see now, I've got, movement, and I'm able to do things and walk, which was a really big thing. Recovery wise, the biggest indicators were I was in the ICU, and 6 days later I was able to move my right big toe. And so when we called the neurologist in to witness that, I was still told, no, I'm not gonna ever be able to walk again, or that was just a spasm. So yeah, there was a lot of doubt on the medical side, not from the nurses, but more so from the neuro side. And I just kept telling them no, that's not gonna happen. I am gonna walk. I feel like having that positive mindset, or telling myself constantly that I am gonna walk, instilled into my brain that, my body was able to follow suit, as well as, my faith, and that carried me through my recovery process. And so to hit on the recovery process, it was a long one. I stayed in the hospital for about 2.5 months, progressing from the ICU into acute rehab. I was at Centerpoint Medical Center, and they took very good care of me.
Can I go back to June
Yeah.
3rd for just a moment?
Of course, yeah.
During the injury, and you're in the hospital, at any point did you lose consciousness? Because you mentioned
Yes.
that you lost a lot of blood.
Yes, so on the scene, I did lose consciousness. And I like to hit on that part too, because that had always been a mystery to me. I lost consciousness on the scene after I called 911.
So you called?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. I heard the tussle between my mom and my stepdad trying to get the gun away from him, and I heard that he said, "You're next," to her. And so I knew in that moment that I was dying, and I felt my body starting to fade away. So, but I did somehow, was able to muster up the energy to grab my phone out of my pocket, and, adrenaline makes you do whatever. So, I still don't understand how I was able to roll onto my stomach, because considering the impact.
Yeah, I'm sitting here
Yeah.
wide-eyed, because that's...
Yeah, considering the impact, I was paralyzed on impact of the bullet. and I fell, and I was on my back, looking up at the ceiling, and grabbed my phone, rolled over because I didn't want him to see that I was calling. And I set the phone on the ground, and I was struggling to call 911 at first because I didn't have the energy. But the phone rang, and I think it was like the third ring because I was like, please, someone pick up. The dispatcher picked up, and I don't remember what they said because all I said was my address twice. And I said, my stepdad I've been shot by my stepdad. And that was it. I don't remember.
That's all you remember?
Yep, I don't remember anything else because at that point I felt like, okay, at least my mom is going to be able to get some help if something happened to her, but I'm at my last. So I just kind of faded out of consciousness, and the space that I was in, because I do remember the loss of consciousness. And it's interesting, and I've tried to find many people with the same or similar experience. I don't have a grand story of like, oh, I saw angels coming towards me or anything. It was more like I was in a dark room. I was conscious in that dark space. I was aware that I was alive, but I was not in the physical realm at all. And it's like I was just aimlessly walking around. I didn't feel any pain. I didn't hear anything. To be honest, I didn't know what had happened prior to me coming into that space. Oh. And the only thing I remember after that is coming to in the ambulance. And the first thing I asked was like, where's my mother? Like, I was so concerned about my mom. And as we were riding in the ambulance, I'm telling them, like, I'm not going to make it. Like, I felt it in my body that I was going to just give out. Again.
Were you in pain, or were you because of the blood loss?
It was because of the blood loss. The pain, like, it was painful when I woke up because I started screaming in pain. But most of it was me feeling my body losing all of that blood volume and
feeling weak
and very weak.
Very weak.
And I weak is an understatement. I really don't know how to put into words what I felt, but I just knew that I wasn't going to last long if the ride was going to be longer than what it ended up being. Because I know, I used to work in the emergency room, and I used to work traumas all the time. I know that we only have a few level 1 centers in the city.
Wow.
And research, Truman, KU, St. Luke's East, those are the top 4, but they're all within that city. The suburbs, the closest thing in my area was Center Point.
Wow.
So, and they're not level 1 because they don't have a certain criteria that's met to become a level 1, but they act as a level 1 trauma. Understood. Because that is the closest facility.
There wasn't an issue of preference. You had to get to the nearest hospital.
I had to get to the nearest.
Get me to the nearest hospital. Okay.
And it's not that they had to ask me or anything. That's something that, dispatchers and all that, and the paramedics and firefighters, they already know, that's their area. So I'm not really sure how that works when they, choose. But if the decision was to get me to Truman, I wouldn't have made it.
So just due to time and where you were physically, what you were feeling. When you, while you're in the hospital, when did you get the visit from your doctor to communicate with you the severity of what you had just gone through? And I don't want to stay really at the scene, but you mentioned being shot 3 times. Were there more bullets fired? Do you know?
I'm not sure if there were more bullets fired. I just know the ones that, I think he had a few in the chamber, but I know for sure that I had 3 that impacted me.
Okay. And so when the doctor came in the morning, was it the early morning, or?
So I was intubated and on the ventilator. So I wasn't sure To be honest, my first day that they turned the sedation down was maybe 4 days after my injury, 3 or 4 days after my injury.
Really?
And even though I was, on the vent since they brought me up to the ICU and everything, my family said I was very active on the vent. Like, to them, it appeared that I, knew what was going on. And
that means by how you responded.
Yeah,
if
by how I
someone
was-
talked to
yeah.
you open your eyes.
Yep. Yep. And I had I had note papers that I wrote or would try to write, and it's funny because my mom kept them all, so you could see the progression of like when I was heavily on sedation until like when I was lightly off sedation and then completely off of sedation.
Wow.
So
That's
the communication,
amazing.
yeah, and I appreciate her keeping those notes. My family said even though I was in that condition, I was still acting as a nurse and directing my own care. And yeah, to me, like, it's like the brain is so powerful. Because even as I'm in this state and I'm the one that needs the critical care, I'm still the nurse and my brain is still able to process what's going on.
I have goosebumps because you mentioned talking about being in a space, the dark space where you were up moving around. I'm wondering, at that period, at that moment, that's the moment you were advocating for yourself for self-care. I don't know if you ever made the connection, but that was my first thought. Like, okay, she's going to take control of this situation. You've worked trauma,
Yeah.
and somehow remained very calm and was able to make your call, get help, and so self-help. Now that's just my assessment. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not any of that, but and I'm definitely not a pastor or any of that. But I just want to share. This is an incredible story. So you're a miracle, I'm sure.
Yeah,
So did they give you some kind of percentages? I don't know, like the
So I do have
the percentages of survival rate in a situation like yours.
Well, yeah, I've been told by my vascular surgeon, my cardiothoracic surgeon, and one of the nurse practitioners that was overseeing my care that I'm very lucky to be alive. Specifically, my cardiothoracic surgeon, he made the choice to wait a little bit to get into my lungs because I had a collapsed lung from that bullet on my left side. He made the decision to wait a little bit to operate on that, but he inputted my chest tube. So they allowed all that, blood to drain out and filter out. And then they did a surgical repair on my lung and took out a piece of my lung. And so even it's different now with taking deep breaths. I don't have a full, it doesn't feel like I'm getting a full capacity of deep breath, even though my lung is functioning normally. And, after follow-up visits and everything, I'm fine. But I was told that had I not received the care in the amount of time that I did at the time that I did, even if it was a second or 2 minutes later, I wouldn't have been here.
Wow.
Yeah.
June 3rd, 2023.
Yep.
Oh, very incredible. You went through a lot.
Yeah.
But do you think it helped being a nurse, having the medical background,
Absolutely.
having the mindset? Because you were very aware, and it seemed like you worked to just stay with us, stay with family, stay with your mom,
Yep.
so you could understand what was happening. And then when the doc comes in and shares the word with you about where you were,
so that's a part.
what was that? What was that
That's
conversation
the part that
like?
I forgot to touch on. So I got the news, or was able to comprehend the news once I got off sedation. I didn't take it very well. I mean, nobody is going to take it well. It still kind of felt like a dream, and I was like, I can't believe this is what's going on. And like, even though like I'm up and this part of me is working, actually I only had one arm to work with for the first 2 months of my injury, because I couldn't, like, they had this all wrapped up, and I had, I think, about 4 surgeries on my arm.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It was so swollen to the point where they had to do fasciotomy. So I have 3 scars from that, and that just allows the tissue to kind of come down from swelling. And then they had to go in. The first surgery was to take a vein from my right leg, which is your great saphenous vein, create a whole new artery in my arm. So that's what this scar is. It's a brand new artery, because that was blown through, and that's why I was bleeding out so bad. So they created a new artery, which I think that's cool. I didn't know, we were that deep into medicine. And then this long scar is the rod repair.
Oh my.
So they went in to fix my bone, place it, and then they went back in to put a rod in there. So I've got a lot of metal in me, and
Can't go through metal detectors.
can't go through metal detectors. It's funny because when I travel, you automatically can go through a metal detector in your chair, but even like if I were to have my cane and standing, like I have to tell them like I can't go through metal detectors, and they'll be like, why? And I'm like, I've got metal in my arm and my spine.
Man, that's so much.
Yeah.
And that's a lot to digest. So the healing process. You're in the hospital 2.5 months, then you go home.
Yeah.
What is that transition like?
Being in the hospital was probably the easiest part. Transitioning back home was definitely the hardest part because I was returning to the space where it happened. And so it happened in my mother's home. So, my mom's home was the only ADA accessible home that I could go to in my family, considering my stepdad was also handicapped.
Got it.
He had a right leg amputee or below the knee amputee. So it was already made accessible because of what, he had gone through. I think it's interesting, and it kind of frustrates me because it's like my mom had to become a caregiver all over again. And that's not what I wanted for her to begin with. She deserves way more. I feel like what I wanted for her was to be able to explore the world and all that. I mean, she's ex-military, so a 21-year vet, so she's explored the world. I've explored the world with her, but I wanted her to do more. And
that's really selfless of you to say that.
Yeah. And I don't know if I think I've conveyed that to her even before my injury. I never wanted her to be a caregiver. I wanted somebody to care for her.
Wow. Caregivers give a lot. I mean, they have a different heart, don't you think?
It's tough being a caregiver because the thing is, my aunt, she had leukemia and she passed away in 2020, and my mom was one of her caregivers. And I think it's just in the nature of my mom to be a caregiver, because even to this day now, after losing her husband, she started caregiving for one of her former bosses when she was a teenager. So they've always kept in touch over the years and stuff. And
she gets to care for the boss.
Yeah. So she
must have been a really good boss.
She gave her her first job, and like they've been in contact ever since.
That's
and so
amazing.
She's known her since I think my mom started working at 14 or something. But she's known her all throughout that. So my mom is giving back to her and caring for her. Which I think is very noble of my mother, but I also want her to pour that into herself, because I know caregivers, they give so much of themselves that it can come to a point where they're not poured enough into, and you get that compassion fatigue.
Yes.
And as a nurse, I know what
you
that
bring up
is.
such a really good point. For our audience, you want to describe that a little bit of what that compassion fatigue is, that's a cool term, but what that
Yeah.
means.
Yeah. So really, I mean, from a nursing standpoint, because I used to work with oncology patients, and while
Cancer patients.
yes, cancer patients, and while I do enjoy or enjoyed that work, I knew that it wasn't going to be a long-term thing for me, because you're caring so deeply and you're forming those relationships with those patients that after a while, caring so much and giving so much of yourself, it becomes burnout. And that's where, you know, the term or the phrase compassion fatigue is coined, because you are fatigued of giving so much of yourself. And there's a lot of signs, you know, that lead up to figuring out that that's what it is. You kind of get a little irritable. You're, you know, you're constantly exhausted. It shows up differently in different people, but I know for me, it showed up as irritability and just spacing out a lot, zoning out a lot. Yeah.
That is so neat. So that recovery process, faith, I'm sure, played a huge part of that. Your knowledge, your medical knowledge, helped you a lot.
It helped, but it also was it was a blessing and a curse in a way, because, you know, when you become a spinal cord injury, everybody wants you to walk again. However, that's not always the case. And you have two different types. You have incomplete and you have complete spinal cord injuries. So incomplete means that your spinal cord was affected and partially severed. Complete, completely severed. So just think of a cable cord where you cut a little bit of it, your wires are exposed. That's an incomplete. You cut the whole thing, all the wires are exposed, and you've got two pieces of that cord.
It's a great analogy. Thank you.
And so with an incomplete, you know, you have a possibility of regaining function or sensory. Some people don't, some people do. And then you have people who are like me, who miraculously recover to this level. Now, my level is a high injury level. And when I tell people my level of injury before, you know, when they see me walking, they're like,
right,
you know, especially if they're in the healthcare field, because it is a miracle. Now you have cervical, which is your neck, spinal cord injuries. I always refer to them as walking spinal cord injuries, because they always, the people that I've met that have had cervical injuries, they always end up walking again.
Really?
So I always been jealous in a way, and I'm like, dang, you know. But it's not always end up walking, but for the most part, a lot of the people that I've met with cervical spinal cord injuries, they do walk.
Wow. What's the difference here versus here?
So,
I know you mentioned positionally, so
yeah.
help us with that a little bit.
So if, let's see, with the T6, you're losing a lot of your abdominal muscles, your back, and everything below that. And with that, you also lose your bowel and bladder function. And that is tough, because when you can regain bowel and bladder function to a certain extent, it looks different with everybody. Spinal cord injuries, everybody looks different. Whereas if you have someone with cardiac history, we can kind of understand where you are and what might lead to next. Whereas spinal cord injuries, you never know. You never know how somebody's gonna recover, because your brain has to
Send signals, right?
send signals and re-educate your neural pathways that have been damaged. So I have points where I don't have full sensory in my legs. Below my knee and especially on my feet. My feet, I do not feel anything. It's numbness constantly.
Really?
It's numbness and tingling. So I'm always very cautious about where I walk. If I'm, with socks or barefoot, I never walk around barefoot. It's always either socks or house shoes. And I do check my feet regularly. I just recently actually was at the gym, and I had fell over the bar that I was about to lift, and it had scratched my shin, but I didn't notice until I looked down, and it was kind of like, it had a little bit of bleeding, but not much to do anything about. But that's where it clicked for me again. I'm always reminded, like, you've got a spinal cord injury, girl. Like, even though you're able to do all these things, there are parts of you that still are affected majorly.
2.5 months in the hospital. You go home, the home where the incident occurred. You are mentally you're incredible. You've got to be like an angel. You've got to be. You're so clear.
Thank you.
You're so sober in terms of how you're able to share this information, and you're very, very calmly. I don't hear if you're angry or upset or bitter, I hear none of that. You are so clear and calm about this, and even the words that you receive from your medical professionals, and you do the work. Your message was different from what they received, but still, you've handled that with a lot of grace.
Yeah, and I trust me, like, I wasn't always this calm about the situation. I do tell people that it was a very rough transition, going back home and being in the space where it all happened, and the only floor that I was accessible to was where it occurred. So, I'm constantly looking at that space, and I had to do a lot of work, a lot of praying, a lot of journaling. I journal a lot. My friends were great support system. My family was great. I did lean into my friends a lot more because, I was just very close to them. And I have a small family, so, but as far as relating to how I'm feeling, and being young and injured and just feeling like my life was taken away from me, I found solace in, like, confiding in them.
How long had you been a nurse prior to this incident?
I think it was 5 years, because this will be 5 years, because this coming year will be my 7th year of nursing.
Wow. Incredible. I don't know if that's something, a journey I could walk. I don't know if that's a path I could walk. Yeah. But I stand here and I remember you coming to our company. I remember you coming in your wheelchair. You were always very nice. I always thought then, and very calm. And I didn't know your story. I was candid with you. I didn't know, we have people coming from all over. So I didn't know your story initially, honestly, when we came in. But after learning and kind of working with your family and learning about you, you're, to me, just remarkable. And then when I look at you now, and then you and I had a journey through some things together, and I'm like, wow, you're such an inspiration. Let me say that. Then how did you go from, because you're back working now too, right?
Well, yeah, I was working. I just recently got laid off, but I was working. I started working 7 months into my injury.
That's just incredible. Yeah, hear that. Are you hearing that?
Yeah, no, I definitely had to sit with it and be like, wow, like some parts of me felt like, did you return to work a little too soon? But I think that, and thankfully it was a remote nursing position, which I had prayed for because I didn't know if I was going to have to go back to school for something else, because nursing, we're always thinking of bedside and the physical abilities of being a nurse, while there are roles in nursing that I could transition to, that would allow me to work from home. It's hard competing for those positions, because now everybody wants to work from home as a nurse.
Yeah. COVID changed a lot, didn't it?
It did. It did. And nursing, it changed a lot since COVID too in the hospital. So a lot of people left the hospital scene.
It's true, because nurses were first line. It's true. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. A lot of nurses left the hospital scene. Some left to go traveling. Do assignments. Which that's where I did some assignments in Chicago, and I was there for 2 years. And then I kind of explored into like nursing education and wellness nursing with hydration therapy and things like that. So I experimented with a little bit of those things, but after I got shot, I was very concerned about where my professional journey was going to lead me. And while I am still, a nurse, I am kind of trying to figure out what is life supposed to be like, and how can I use my degree as well as pursue a different type of profession as well. So I guess that's where Iron Adaptive kind of came in. And so I rehabbed with them.
Yeah, you rehab with them, right?
Yeah.
Talk about that journey.
Yeah.
How long was that process? And how did it go from, well, you're doing so wonderful, they're like, oh, Brandy, look. No, go ahead.
So I'll start
Please
by
share.
When I discharged from the hospital, I had a month in between me starting rehab at Ability KC. I love Ability KC. They just spotlighted me at their luncheon this year. And if it wasn't for them, I don't know if my return would have been as quick, because they have so many resources and equipment to help re-educate my nerve, pathways. And so I was at Ability KC for about 20 visits. And then once those 20 visits were over, I also had the resource of crime victims compensation. So they compensated me for lost wages, as well as they funded a medical device for my leg that I at one point needed to help because I had foot drop in my left leg.
Wow.
And then they also funded additional visits to Ability KC because I wanted to.
Is that how you connected with the crime victims compensation? Was it through Ability KC?
No, it was my mom connected with Hope House.
Okay.
And they gave us the resources, or gave my mom the resources, because at that point, I wasn't in the space to understand what was going on as far as, outside of just being a patient. So my mom handled a lot of those things, and also started my disability paperwork. So they got all that stuff in the day that I was injured, and the day they got the news.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So my mom.
Kudos to LaWanda.
Yeah. She got a lot of things going. She's always been that person in the family to make sure business is handled. So I'm very grateful for that.
But you try to stay ahead of it a little bit.
Yeah.
No, because as you know, there are resources available. Navigating the systems to access those resources, you do have to kind of put it ahead of you, and you have to be patient because it's not long. Immediate, right?
Yeah.
You can apply for assistance and help, but it's not like tomorrow.
Yeah. So with disability, I didn't know that you had to be disabled for 5 months before you start getting disability. And so that was also one of my concerns because, at that point I was still having to pay rent in Chicago, and my savings was drained from,
wow.
being injured and having to take care of bills still. But back to like my transition out of the hospital and, from Ability KC, I also was referred to Disabled But Not Really from one of the occupational therapists at Ability KC. And so Wes Hamilton, he is he's the founder of Disabled But Not Really. And he does a lot of great work. And and I did his program. It was a 12-week program. Eight of those 12 weeks were one-on-one fitnesses, and then they had group fitness sessions on Saturdays. And then
while you're going through these programs, I want to ask also, and it doesn't have to be a long answer, but in these programs, are you also receiving mental health services to complement the physical?
So in the Disabled But Not Really program, they also have mental health check-ins on Fridays.
Okay.
So they do that, and then they also touch on nutrition, and just collaborate with other athletes to create a community. So I got to know a couple people through there. Then after I ended that program, graduated from that program, I asked my doctor if I could get approved for or referral for aquatic therapy, because I heard that was good for return and just range of motion. So I did aquatic therapy, and then in the middle of that, I'm trying to find another program, because I started going to the gym by myself, but I felt like I wanted something more structured, and something to keep me accountable. So I do remember going to the Midwest Ability Summit and meeting Nick Orlando at the station for Iron Adaptive, and I wrote down my information, but something in me, I was like, oh, they're probably going to charge me, because we do have services for people with disability in the city that will help with the physical, return or just fitness in general, but some of those they come at a cost. And
the cost is really, a lot of the programs
it's expensive to be disabled.
Yeah.
And I don't think that it is fair to charge someone for something that they had no control over. And that's where I give big kudos to Iron Adaptive and Disabled But Not Really. Iron Adaptive specifically is a ongoing organization that we are tuition free, so we thrive off of donations and volunteers to come help train our athletes, and we don't believe in charging a dime, because you're already going through so much being disabled and having to pay so much costs, that it just isn't in our mission to try to profit off of those people.
Because that whole process, whether it's going through your therapy, getting the strength to go on each day, because life is, as you knew it previously to your injury, is different from the life you're experiencing, and a lot of the healing process is really the mind.
And
so you got to get the mind, so you can get your body.
That's where Iron Adaptive really spoke to me too, because they're bridging that gap from being discharged from physical therapy, because most insurances only give you 20 visits, and
that's good to know. I mean, this is good information.
20 visits is not enough, considering
this is a lifetime, right?
This is a lifetime, and this is an injury that you're going to live with forever. I wish that I had the power to change it. I mean, I'm sure I could in some way, but the way that the government's going, I don't know. But that's why these programs are so important to share, because once you're done with those 20 visits that, physical therapy gives you, it kind of leaves people in like okay, what now? And half the time people decline because they don't follow through with, you can give them home workouts to do at home, and depending on the type of support that they have, you may have a lot of people who fall off and don't continue those workouts or those, things that they need to do at home that were assigned to them post discharge. So that's where Iron Adaptive comes in, and we talk about the individual's goals. And it doesn't have to be anything grand. For me, my goals started off with, I want to walk properly. or I want to enhance how I walk. Then it progressed to, I want to get into powerlifting. And then it progressed to, now I want to see if I can qualify for the Paralympics in rowing.
That's amazing.
So, you know,
That's
our
amazing.
program, we work with people because we don't want to have to train you forever.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to have to train you forever. That is not our goal. Our goal is to get you to your goal. Mm-hmm. So if you work with us and you come and say, hey, I just want to be able to reach up and get a can of tomato soup from my kitchen. Okay, well, we're going to do some workouts to reflect what that's going to feel like. You know, functional training.
So it's tailored to the individual need.
Mm-hmm.
It's tailored to the individual need. That's genius.
Yeah.
Because we don't have most programs, not all, but if you can get them where they're tailor-made as opposed to a one-size-fits all,
right,
then I'm more vested because you're gonna take care of me. You're gonna focus in on me. So that's really good to know.
And so that's the thing. We do one-to-one exercises during the week, and then we have a group workout on Saturdays at Revolution Gym in Overland Park.
Wow.
And Revolution Gym is owned by John, who has donated his space to us to be able to do that.
That is so awesome.
Yeah, and so we're really blessed. We really thrive off of creating connections with people and companies in the community that want to contribute to our mission.
Now, how long have you been with Iron Mobility?
Iron Adaptive.
Iron Adaptive.
Yeah, I've been with them since 2023 as an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
I became their director of marketing and media in August.
Are all of the individuals who are affiliated with the organization have had some personal experience and or family member who's had to endure some type of challenge or disability, and that's what was the impetus, the impetus for the organization? So
Travis Neff is the founder, and ironically, he was my physical therapist back in high school in 2011, 2012 when I tore my ACL.
No way.
Yeah.
Really?
So life came full circle. When I
goodness.
found his organization, I had no idea, and I looked up, the team on there, and I was like, no way, he's not gonna believe. So, when we met up, he's like, girl, what happened? Like, he remembered me.
Wow.
And mind you, like I said, that was back in 2011, 2012. Mm-hmm. He knew me as a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
And so to reconnect with him, I felt so comfortable. And then Nick Orlando, he is the director of program management.
Is there an age limit?
So there is, but we also like to assess mobility, because just because you're at a certain age, it doesn't mean that you can't participate.
So you start with 18?
So we start with 14.
Okay, that's 14 to...
14 to 17.
Okay.
And then we have on our website, you can go to ironadaptive.org to explore, our team. You can see who our team is. You can see who our athletes are, the events that we do or have coming up. You can also refer an athlete if you or someone, is interested in joining. We have a referral link on there, and then we also have a donation page that if you feel compelled to donate to our mission, then, we're always welcome.
I'm curious, in your journey, it's been about a year and a half now. You're doing really well, really, really, really well.
Thank you.
Have you encountered or met anyone with a similar journey? Or
as far as like injury-wise
and recovery, or are you kind of in a lane of your own?
I'm pretty much in a lane of my own. I have met people who've had the same level of injury, two of which I met and became really good friends with. Over the summer, I went to Adaptive Training Foundation in Texas, and Iron Adaptive was able to, get me there and get me into that program. And so it's a 2-month program, well, 9 weeks, but 2 months that you're down there, and they house you It's all free, and they focus on mental health, physical fitness, and all these other things, creating community. But in that program, I did meet two people who had the same level of injuries, and they looked a lot different. So one had no feeling below, and one had sensory but no motor function.
Wow.
And then you had me who had both. So,
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's a unique thing, and like I said, spinal cord injuries, it's no one size fit all. Everybody's different.
Mindset. Let's talk about that the last few minutes here. Mindset, and then let's talk about contact information so people can stay in touch with you. Okay.
Okay.
How important is mindset and faith?
Mindset is super important. When I used to work with cancer patients, I think that's where I kind of channeled in for myself. I always used to tell them, the more positive you think, the better outcome your health will be. The mind's always going to follow the body. The body's always going to follow the mind. And staying positive, even when you have a bit of doubt, just that mustard seed, which we can also equate to faith. Having that mustard seed of faith, knowing that there's something good that can come of this. And I always say that walking is always the goal for people immediately, but I know with myself, I became realistic, and I'm like, well, walking may not always, or may not even come. So I need to look at what life is going to look like if I don't gain the function to walk. And so I started looking at videos of people living their life in their chairs, and that inspired me because I started seeing people do a lot of things that I've never done, even as an able-bodied person. So, having that positive mindset and looking up those things and even advocating for yourself is the most important. And then there's faith, believing in, whoever you pray to, and just making sure that, you allow yourself to feel the emotions that you feel, and it's okay. Those emotions are always valid no matter what. But learning how to parent those emotions and returning back to that positive mindset.
Amazing. Ever thought about a podcast?
I have not.
Can I plant that seed today?
You can plant that seed today.
Just think about that. Just as you journey. I don't know if you have a video recording of your journey or not.
I do. I have a whole album in my photo on my phone, in my Photos app, called "Walk It Like I Talk It."
Well, there it is. I hope that I planted that seed. I think I think this show today is going to help so many people today, Brandy. I'm so grateful that you came and spent some time with us today. I hope you'll come back. Will you do that?
I definitely will.
And we'll continue to talk about that because you had some really good information, your own journey, but also the story of your mom and how other people around you, former therapists, right? Yeah. How connection to others. All of those things are important. Yep. For those who want to stay in contact with you, how can that happen?
Yeah, so there's a few ways that you can contact me. I have, of course, Instagram, because I'm a young person. So
I'm millennial.
Yeah, a millennial. So on Instagram, my handle is IMBEEINGME. So it's I'm being me. So that's one way to contact me. You can also email me at brandyofields@gmail.com. Also you can contact me through Iron Adaptive. You can go on their site, ironadaptive.org, or you can email ironadaptive@gmail.com.
Well, I tell you what, Iron Adaptive got a really good deal. They have a really good individual as a director who can walk it and talk it. Do you hear me? Who can walk it and talk it. I thank you so much for taking the time with us. We are excited to have you a part of Courageous Home Care. And of those of you who want to stay in contact with us at Courageous Home Care, you could do that at courageoushomecare.org. We are YouTube. We have videos there. You can reach out there. Our number is 816-699-2352, 816-699-2352. I am Jeanette Bush. Thank you so much for spending time with us. And you know what? We're going to see you next week. We're going to talk a little bit about next week foster care. And we have a young lady who's going to join us, who is a caregiver who does a little bit of both, is a foster parent and does elder care. We're going to talk about, if you are in this industry, how you can maintain, and if you're thinking about becoming a foster parent, we need lots of them. So thank you so much for hanging out with us. Come back next week, listen to that story, and thank you again, Brandy, for hanging out with us.
Of course, thank you.
Brandy Fields with Iron
Adaptive.
Thank you.